In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies and knights, to the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host from deep in the heart of Texas, Mr. Dustin Melbardis. How you doing, sir?
Good evening, Russell. I'm getting to talk to you when it's daylight outside. Finally, it's not the middle of the night when we're recording.
All right, we've been saving up all that daylight for... Now we get to spend it on daylight savings time. So.
For this, yes.
Well, I'm excited. We have a new guest joining us today here, coming to you from the great state of New Jersey and the Puppet Perspectives YouTube channel. It is your special guest, Mr. Jarrell. How you doing, sir?
Hey everybody, and I am happier than a camel on hump day, which ironically is the day we're recording this. It's
right.
a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me to talk one of the probably weirdest movies I've seen in the past hour.
Let's get weird, but before we do, tell us about the Puppet Perspectives, because I want to let everybody know this is an audio podcast, but we see Jarrell the puppet on the other side of the screen. So tell us, Jarrell, about the Puppet Perspectives.
As you probably also, viewers right now, are looking at the thumbnail or whatever this is, you'll see my handsome puppet face, but I am a dog puppet that has my own YouTube channel as well as podcast that I started a few years ago. And what we do is we gather other puppets throughout the community, whether they're local or not, and discuss different movies, and we review albums, and we also just talk about mainstream media stuff. So everything we say on the podcast is we discuss movies, music, media, and more. We love alliteration on our show, hence the name of Perspectives. Also, we like to do something a little bit different when we play tributes to people who we do a thing called pre-death tributes, because a lot of people do tributes to people after they pass away. As you probably look on YouTube right now, you'll see there's a lot of tributes to David Lynch. They didn't wait until after he passed away to do something. What we do is we do it before, and the best way we do is by we rank their discography or their filmographies or what have you. So you'll see the latest one we did was for The Cure. You'll know that Robert Smith is not dead yet, but we believe there's about a 67% chance that he will be someday.
Yeah, eventually, right.
Yeah.
The odds are in your favor, I think, and it's a smart move.
And what we also notice that every person that we've done a pre-death tribute to hasn't passed away yet, so we might have the key to preserving people's lives.
A little bit of a lucky rabbit swing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Jarrell, what is a movie that really changed for you as you got older and you came back and revisited the movie?
I narrowed it down to two. One is The Parenthood from 1989, because I saw it as a kid, and I think it's one of those movies that has a different impact on you as you get older and become a parent yourself. If you guys ever seen that movie with Steve Martin back in his days when he was, I guess he was younger, but he didn't look younger, because we all know Steve Martin was born with gray hair in the 70s or something, whatever year he was born. That one changes every time I see it. I have to stop everything and watch it. If I run into anyone who hasn't seen it, especially if they are parents themselves, they throw that movie on and you'll get a little misty-eyed, Niagara Falls, as Buster Poindexter said in Scrooge. And another movie that shows that I'm becoming quite a square now is Animal House, because now I'm starting to see these movies and kind of side with the authority on this. It's like, Dean Warmer just wanted to run a school, and these guys are just mucking it up. Anyway, it's one of those college movies that snobs versus slobs, if you've seen Caddyshack or anything like that, and it's just underdogs or the lower class people always end up winning in the end. And in this case with Animal House, I still love it. It's one of my top 5 comedies of all time, but I've been looking at it this the past year or so, and it's like, man, these guys are, a-holes, I guess you can say.
Jarrell, I'm so with you in a different context, which is that in this town I live in, there's a large university. And the neighborhood I live in, everyone that lives on my street, my little cul-de-sac over here, we're all just working people, small families. We're just in that area where there's no kids. There's no partiers. Well, for the
Mhm.
first time in 6 years living in this house, just catty cornered from me, we've got like frat wannabes they're playing their dang music too loud, and I every time I think that I'm like, ah man, I can feel the gray hairs spurting out. So it's just I feel the same way. I'm these dang kids.
Yeah, that you're looking for like footprints on your lawn and you're telling them to get off it. It's just as bad,
Yeah,
man. But our parents warned us the same thing, and it's a vicious cycle. Someday those kids that are harassing you out there will be in your shoes.
And Dustin, how about you? What is a movie that's changed for you as you've gotten older?
the answer is weird because I got introduced to too many movies way too young, but it's Reservoir Dogs. So let me. My dad, dad did a great job introducing cool music and cool movies to me, but a lot of it was just too young. And with Reservoir Dogs, I grew up looking for what was cool, what was exciting, or what was funny in a movie, and I didn't pay attention to acting. I didn't pay attention to emotion on screen. It was more about the bright flashes and the loud bangs. So this is just something where, as I mean, I've seen it 4 or 5 times now, but I get to see the masterpiece it is instead of just when's the next action piece or the loud gunshot. So that one's changed a lot.
What makes you think it's more of a masterpiece nowadays, though?
I've gotten in like huge into, especially with the help of this show, into especially men showing emotion and face acting. So that was something where I wasn't paying attention to being able to portray things like fear, things like uncertainty. We get a lot of portrayal of emotions in the movie we're covering tonight, and even though that emotion is frequently just confusion or normlessness. But this is something where I would not have paid attention to that when I was 13 years old, but now I'm like, oh, this is some good stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Is your names Mr. Blonde, Mr. Pink?
It'll be
I
Mr.
love that
Pink.
movie, man. Because I think also too the emotions I feel at the end of the movie where it gets more rewatches where you're like, why did you admit that thing you admitted now? Couldn't you have waited till later? But then you watch it again and you realize the impact that the two characters I'm kind of being like vague about their relationship as it builds to that moment.
And it's the thing that transcends all stories is portray. Then that's the reason we love good acting. Is that if the story is about high wealth, if it is about poverty, it is if it is about incredible drama or romance, is that emotion permeates all genres. So being able to see that, this is just an example of Reservoir Dogs, but that's the reason that it's changed for me. Is I'm paying better attention as an audience.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man.
So a movie for me that's changed as I've gotten older is The Odd Couple from 1968. It's a great movie, and you're aware of the humor even at a young age, but it has these serious elements to it. And as you watch it, you realize how much heart there is in it as you get older as well. It gets richer and more complex, and it's still a great movie. Hope we cover it someday. I love it.
I didn't know they made a movie to that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon. Definitely see that if you get a chance. Now, Dustin, let's get started here. What movie are we going to cover today?
From 1977, Eraserhead.
You did Mystery Men, which had Pencilhead and Son of Pencilhead, and now it's very fitting that you're here with us to do Eraserhead. So you've completed all of the stationary heads there.
He has to do all the head movies, so Beavis and Butthead is the next one, right?
Oh yes,
With it when they do America.
Or the universe, or the solar system. Well, I guess the universe is the most they can do, right?
So Eraserhead stars Jack Nance, Charlotte Stewart, Alan Joseph. It comes out in 1977. It is budgeted for a lowly $100,000. It had a troubled production that we'll get into that too. It's spread out over a long period of time. It is very lucrative though. It grosses $7.1 million domestically over the years. And it places at the box office. It's not real clear because the 1977 years, not complete information on that, but we do know the number one movie from that year was Star Wars A New Hope, which we covered on episode 200 of the Retro Movie Roundtable. IMDb gives Eraserhead a 7.3. The critics of Rotten Tomatoes like it quite a bit at 87%. The audience score, pretty high at 82%. This is a winner at the Avaraz Fantastic Film Festival. It wins an Antenna 2 award, whatever that is. And it is also nominated at that same film festival for the grand prize. Doesn't win, though. And it is the Fantasporto Awards nominee, which is in Barcelona, for Best Film. And this is a key film. This is a culturally defining film, so it is on the National Film Preservation Board. They added it to the National Film Registry as being culturally and historically or aesthetically significant. Jarrell, have you seen this movie Eraserhead before? If so, what is your experience with it?
This is my first time not only seeing Eraserhead, but my first time seeing anything by David Lynch. I recall as a kid, or when I want to say Twin Peaks came out, or stuff like that, or Dune. I was like, this type of movie, this avant-garde style that I hear he does, or the show he does, and or like even like the satire that you see, like The Simpsons, Who Shot Mr. Burns, all that stuff, that spoof his stuff. I'm like, I don't think this guy is for me. So I never had any desire to see anything he did, except for two films, this one and his second movie, that of Elephant Man. I was like, I'm interested in those two stories, and Racerhead, just looking at the cover alone, I was like, oh, I know nothing about this movie. I am curious about checking it out.
Okay, so now that you got to it, and you have checked it out, taken it in for the first time, what's your take on this, Jarrell? Did you enjoy Eraserhead?
Well, I was expecting like this kind of fever dream-ish film, black and white noir thing, and I basically got what I wanted. But I think this movie is more of like, it's got a lot of those student film vibes with a splash of pretentiousness. And when I say that, I don't mean like the movie itself. I'm assuming that the audience that says you gotta see it and said it's so great probably has a bit of pretentiousness in their heart. I expected that. It's his debut, so I'm not going to be too harsh on your first movie. Obviously, you don't want your first thing you did to be the best thing you ever did, unless you're like the Beatles or something like that. After watching it, I have a lot more to say, but in a most positive way, I have mixed feelings about the movie. Mostly because I like the way it looked, and opposite about the plot.
Okay, that makes sense
I think
here.
you're very cordial, very diplomatic in the way you're describing your mixed feelings. I think that's smart.
Dustin, how about you? Had you seen Eraserhead before? You're a big Lynch guy.
I am a big Lynch guy in the terms of I think I get what he's going for, and that his art that he presents is something that I'm willing to gobble up. I know that soon I will be giving a plot summary to this movie, which will be one of the hardest things I've ever done. I was a big fan of the Twin Peaks show. I did watch Twin Peaks The Return. I've seen, I think, half of his movies. And there's not too many, but I've seen probably half of them. And so there are things that even some of our co hosts will say, like, I don't dig that. I don't like not having a resolution. I don't like the questions. And for me, I go, that is part of the smorgasbord of what you're offered at the movie theater is just there are some things that are nicely wrapped up for you, and there are some things that are the exact opposite. And sometimes I'm in the mood for that exact opposite thing. So that's the kind of David Lynch guy I am, is that I'm interested in that. I'm interested in his fascination with music and sound. And I think he was a wonderful individual to listen to and to see his passion for what he was doing. So that's your description of Dustin as a Lynch guy. Jarrell, I'm so thankful that you have brought a movie on your short list that you had not seen before. I think that's a wonderful way to approach this show, is to say, I'm going on a movie show and I want to bring a movie I haven't seen and that I don't have like a steep history with. Because I also had not seen this one before. This watch was the first time for me. When you mentioned the word like pretentiousness, I think I know what you're talking about in terms of fans of Lynch or fans of movies that could be just categorized as fully surreal. And that's not
Mhm.
for everyone. So I was expecting full surrealism. I was expecting to be left with questions. I was expecting to not have answers or clarity. And when you know that you're not going to have it, then you can enjoy the tasting menu. And that's what I got to do. So I did enjoy the experience of watching it. We have a whole show to do. So we'll talk about the things that we enjoyed and the things that we maybe didn't enjoy as much. If we're talking about a movie that is now nearly 50 years old, does it hold up? Well, as far as art can hold up, which we've shown throughout history, different, whether it's sculpture, painting, or raucous sound, there are things that hold up, but this movie isn't for everybody. So that's where you got to make that distinction about something holding up. Maybe not so much, but overall this was a cool viewing experience, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it with someone who it was also brand new to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you didn't think I was calling you pretentious, but
Not at all. Not at all. No, no, no. Yeah, well, I think there you have to know. You have to know when you make recommendations to your friends, or you have to know when you champion something, like why you're doing it, or what you have to know your audience, even with your own
Mhm.
friends. And so there are things that I might say that I'm a fan of, that if I don't say it the right way, I would come off as real highfalutin pretentious.
Right.
And I think there are some people who might say, "Oh, you're looking for a good movie? Yeah, start with Eraserhead." And that's where you're going, um, I don't think that's exactly what we're looking for, but I know what you mean. But no, no offense taken here at all.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to say it to someone that's like in the grips of an acid trip.
Well, you know what? That actually might come up a little later on the show.
Yeah.
I will make it 3 in a row. I had not seen Eraserhead before. I was very intrigued because he's not with us on the show tonight, but another member at the round table here, Chad Robinson, has railed on this movie for years, saying this is one of the worst things I've ever seen. It had a very strong reaction against this movie. This movie, I will go ahead and say, is akin to something of the artwork of like Francis Bacon. It is not meant to feel good, and therefore you have walked into a different type of experience. You must wear a different hat. You didn't come to this ride to have a delightful time. It is scary. It is uncomfortable.
That's a great word for this.
There's art that is made to make you feel these things, and I don't think I want to hang up a Francis Bacon in my living room. Eraserhead is not a movie that I will rewatch frequently. However, I think it is an interesting discussion point, and I think it is an intriguing movie. Its imagery will certainly stay in my head. I can tell you this much. I'm not going to be forgetting it anytime soon. I think that it is a brave movie, and we have come at this in a reverse order, and we'll talk more about this later. Also, I think I can have appreciation for this, greater appreciation for this, because I've seen later works of Lynch's films, and I see where the progression is for Lynch as a filmmaker in this. On its own, I can't say that this would have been my pinnacle of his work, and it's often lauded as one of his greater works. I actually prefer some of his later works, like Blue Velvet, which we covered early on in the show. That was really a very intriguing movie. I like Mulholland Drive, which we covered. This is a different experience here at Eraserhead, and I'll get into some of those differences. But I will tell you this much, because of those other films, and assessing David Lynch as an artist and as a director, I would say, yeah, this is a very intriguing movie. And if you're a film fan, assuming you are, given that you're listening to this podcast, you probably should see this movie, under the caution that this movie's going to be upsetting for some people. Not everybody can take this. And I would not hold it against anybody if you came away with our friend Chad's reaction of deeply upsetting. Like, this would turn me off. So that is a completely reasonable response, and I would understand why somebody would say that. But having said that, we're going to talk about this movie. We're going to spoil this movie. So we're going to get into this one after this break.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
All right, we are back, and this is your final warning. There are spoilers that lie ahead. So if you have not seen Eraserhead, you're going to want to watch it and come back and check this out. Dustin, for those who haven't seen Eraserhead since 1977, do you want to refresh people's memories?
Henry Spencer, paper bag in hand, walks through the streets, warehouse junkyards, and industrial spillways back to his Eastern Bloc-looking tenement building, where he is informed by his neighbor that he is expected for dinner at Mary's place. Mary's parents get to know him briefly, offer him the task of carving their tiny, still-moving roasted chickens, before ambushing him with the knowledge that Mary has given birth to a premature baby, or something like a baby. The marriage must happen, and happen soon. We are transported back to his apartment with a wailing/mewling lizard creature and an unhappy and overwhelmed wife. He retreats from the world in daydream-like fashion to the fantasy inside of his radiator, where he watches a stage show of a woman who looks like she's the embodiment of a trip to the moon perform soft shoe. His waking dream, or unescapable nightmare, continues to show him a baby with boils and pox all over, a vision of his wife producing more slimy worm-like beings, followed by his own body with his head removed and then fabricated for erasers. In his search for anything that would bring him comfort, considering his wife has moved back to his parents' place, he watches the attractive neighbor next door bring home a greasy suitor, before finally removing the swaddling wraps of his child, revealing no skin, exposed organs, and the inescapable choice to tear at the baby's organs with scissors until it erupts in garmonbosia. His respite comes from the radiator show, where the performer embraces him and he closes his eyes in a bright space, finding comfort in whatever this space is, which can really only be characterized as being the opposite of the entire world we've seen for the last 90 minutes. It's calm, quiet, it's bright, and then curtains.
See, that was a great explanation. So now I get it. Do
Now
you
you
guys
get it,
mind
yeah.
if I change my rating at the end? I had a different rating. Now I'm gonna have to change it because if Dustin was there to explain this movie to me, then I would have enjoyed
Yeah.
it a little bit more. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it took 48 years, and finally I'm here to nail it, to actually get a raise. You're welcome, everybody. I wrote that in 10 minutes, and it was easy.
Hmm.
Well, that happens a lot, Jarrell. When we get on here and talking about this movie from other perspectives, changes the way that I view the movie, and it does change your rating and how you enjoy it. Let's talk about it now. We're on the other side of the spoiler break here. Jarrell, this movie, like you said the story itself might not be what attracts you to it. It's more about the style. It's about how it's executed, and it's about the aesthetics, the sounds, and the atmosphere that it portrays. But you alluded to maybe the story is something that isn't the headliner here.
Yeah, whatever story that was before Dustin explained it to me, a lot of it is similar to the movie The Joker from 2019, where I got at the end and I'm thinking to myself, what if some of this stuff actually isn't happening? It's all in the person's head. So this movie doesn't really make it clear that it's going that direction of a fantasy. You just have to assume that when things happen that don't make sense. Or one of the questions I was asking when the movie began. Let me just get to this first thing that was bothering me. When the movie starts, like, when does it take place? Because the dialogue and all that stuff and the way it's shot, like, if someone told me this movie came out in, like, I don't know, like 54, I believe it.
Hmm.
It looks old, and I think that's one of the things it's going for. But then I'm kind of like thinking to myself, I think this movie's supposed to be taking place now. But what's confusing is his job is he's a printer. I'm like, don't they have machines that do that? So what does he actually do? You know? But
Hmm.
then maybe the question you have to ask yourself is not when does this take place, but where? Perhaps this isn't like a world that we're used to, and it's so close to our reality. That's why it's hard to separate that this is alternate universe.
It's a good point.
Once I got to that point, I think my problem with the plot is the main character that's driving it. I find him way too passive,
Mm-hmm.
just going through the motions and letting these people like walk all over him, or people dictate his life or what he does, or kids at that same time. And I just didn't feel like it. You leave the movie at the end like saying, "What was the point of that?" But I think like when we start getting into like the visuals, I think that was the point.
With David Lynch, I think it's important that he would say that it's better not to know so much about what things mean or how they might be interpreted, or you'll be too afraid to let things keep happening. He doesn't necessarily want to spell out everything for his viewers. David Lynch would also say that it's better for the viewers to decide for themselves what they think it means. This is asking a lot. This movie is not going to tell you what the meaning of the story is. It is not going to tell you what the end of it means. It is not going to tell you what the worm monsters are symbolic for, the why that woman has puffy cheeks in the radiator. They're not going to tell you these things. I will at least give my take early on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a reaction against fatherhood that we see from Jack Nance's character. That he's accidentally stumbled into a marriage and being a father, and this is a great fear for him, and that he has this massively deformed child that is extremely needy, would not be accepted by most of society because it looks more like Admiral Akbar from Return of the Jedi than it does a human.
It's a trap. That's what I thought. It's a trap.
Yeah. But the mother leaves him, and he's on his own, and now his greatest fear of, I'm in way over my head, because he was totally letting her just do all the work. It was evident that he was just kind of, like you said, riding by. He is a blank slate. He is the everyman. He is us to sit here and watch his journey through this and react. It's for us to react to the scene that's going around him. So these horrors unfold. And I think the lady in the radiator is representative of death. In killing his child, he then takes his own life or causes the loss of his own life. And then the end, we hear this reprieve of the lady in the radiator, her song would say, in heaven, everything is fine. To me, that says he's choosing death. He's choosing to leave this all behind in a suicide kind of moment of, I'm going to escape this nightmare that I'm in for that. Dark movie. That's my take.
Yeah.
It is not the only take of this movie, and I'm interested to hear what you guys
Yeah.
think it is, because Lynch wanted you to have 3 different viewings and take 3 different sets of feelings away. And the other thing I think is this is all dream. Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet that we covered earlier, not Dune so much. That's a different kind of movie that he directed. But those movies are a hybrid nature of what is dreamscape versus reality. There is a blending of the two. It will make you, the viewer, really what's real and what's not. To me, this is entirely dreamscape.
But don't you guys find that when a movie is a dream, it's hard to attach yourself to the characters?
You kind of feel like the rug is pulled out from underneath you
Mm-hmm.
if you are provided that as your resolution.
Yeah.
If your answer is that this was a dream, you feel as if you've, won the worst prize. And I think this is different from that.
Yeah.
I am really, really excited about the idea that none of us is right. Some of us might be along the lines of something that makes sense to us. But there are things that Russell just said that I agree with. And there's no observable thing that tells you that the movie ends in his death. But it does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And of the things that are represented in this movie, there's a number of ways that this can go. Now, Russell, I think you gave us a little bit of some Lynch quotes, or at least maybe some interview stuff that he did. In preparation for the show, I watched an interview that he did about this, and I loved. He was so good at speaking about his work in a way that left the door open to all. And so, to read a little bit from something I listened to earlier today, is he's talking about like where your intuition kicks in. You have an inner knowingness when you're watching one of his movies. You see a thing, you think about it, you feel it, you sort of know something inside when you're watching a movie like this. And you can rely on that. If you go with a film with abstractions, like to a coffee place, your friend will say something and someone else will say no. And that's kind of what this is about, is some of you will have different options. We will have different opinions on this or beliefs. And so you do know, like you know it for yourself, what this movie meant when you watched it. And what you know is valid. And that's a direct line from him. The filmmaker's telling to you, the audience, what you feel about this movie is correct. And that's a fun way to approach this, and something that not a lot of audience members will accept. You think back to your philosophy classes, you can't start with theory without assumptions. You have to agree to certain assumptions. And the assumption we must agree with before watching or discussing a movie like this is we don't really know. And some people aren't willing to take that assumption. Or, Jarrell, sort of like what you said is, don't you feel like you can't connect if it's all a dream? If you've been feeling like you wanted to make connections and then none of it was real, that can feel like a betrayal. But in this case, you had described him as being passive. But in the way I was looking at it, it is that this world that he's in has made him passionless. It's not a choice to be passive. It's interacting with this dark, dirty, stormy, windy, loud. It's hard to say cruel, but just strange world that is like our own, but maybe not our own, has made him not want to interact. Now, that is something that I believe a lot of people in their lives feel, is if the world is stacked against you, or if there's nothing out in the world that seems to be going for you, what's easier, to rally against the world or to retreat? And I think there's quite a bit of retreatism in this portrayal, Jack Nance's portrayal of Henry, of, well, I don't know if I want that. I don't want that. I have to exist. I have to work. You mentioned he's a printer. I have a friend who's a printer right now in 2025.
What does that mean, though? Does he works on the machine, or is he actually writing everything down? I don't get it.
He works on a machine that is about a quarter of the size of a Walmart.
Okay, so he's a printer operator or a printer technician. That's what they should have called him. Then I wouldn't be spending the past few days wondering what does that mean? Like no one even asks him that when he goes to the scene.
At a smaller scale, when you're doing architectural drawings, that's what I do for work. I mean, I don't do architectural, but I'm saying like when you have my documents printed, you go to a printer. So it's it's somebody who makes prints for you. Making all those large scale drawings, floor plans are expensive.
Yeah.
You might have some of that paper around, but I mean, when you have to make like a bunch of copies of that, they have places that are set up specifically to do that. And yes, in this world, they do have iPads out on the construction site, but printing and paper, especially large format paper, is still very much a thing.
Oh, I need it.
Yeah.
You need it, yeah.
So yeah, but in both cases, printers are out there. Shout out to all the printers.
Well, let me say this, and I think I want to button up that topic with something, is the choice to make him a printer is a choice. Like my friend who's a printer, I'm not going to say he enjoys his job. He does his job because he can get by doing it. But there are times when he's working, like that printing press, that machine runs for 24 hours. Like it just keeps running. You have to get 1 million brochures out. You just have to keep going. And you have to change that ink out on the fly. And that kind of job can be either satisfying, which sounds like to most people isn't, or specifically unsatisfying. So if you're choosing a profession or a job, a career for your blasé, the world has given me nothing and I don't want to interact with it that much character, then choosing printer might make a lot of sense.
Okay. That is a small nitpick I had, and I'm over that. And I understand that he is passive, but it's just a shame that there was no Maury Povich at the time, because that kid don't look like him. If he can have
Right.
the paternity test or something like that, because he even let them give that to him. Like that's kind of weird that the mother's telling you that the baby was born rather quickly. There's these warning signs that he just did not even bother to pursue or care. He just seen cuts and they're living together, obviously married, and she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, wait a minute. You're the one that pushed this on me, but of course that would be too much dialogue, and that's not what he was going for.
This movie. Yeah, for this movie, that'd be way too much dialogue.
He's thinking, so be honest with me. Did you get with the giant squid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just want to see the whole scene of him opening the envelope, and once he said, "You're not the father," Mary running down the hall and the camera's chasing her down, and Jack jumping up and down, or Henry jumping up and down, saying, I told you it wasn't mine," like just flaunting to the audience.
You are not the father. Yeah, gosh. I have some overnight lodging spaces at one of the locations I work, and I definitely have told the housekeepers, like, make sure you turn it to channel 3 because Maury is on. And you got to make sure that when the guests check in, that the first thing they see is, you are not the father.
Just a little warning at what their fate could be,
Jarrell, I got to ask you, because this is your first viewing of this movie, but also your first Lynch movie. There were probably things you mentioned, the Simpsons parodies, or like there are people that might use the term, an adjective about filmmaking, Lynchian. This movie opens with sideways Jack Nance face there's like a silent scream. There's this weird little parasitic looking worm thing that comes out of nowhere. We've got a rock floating in space. We've got a zoom in to this hole in the top of a cabin. These are all things that after the movie ends, particular images might stay with you, or you're just trying to keep up with what this movie was trying to teach you or show you. But the first 3-4 minutes of this must have been a little jarring to be like, what am I watching?
Yeah, definitely.
10.5 minutes before there's any speaking. And if you think that that's a lot of silent time, the last, somewhere like 25 minutes of this thing, there's no speaking there either, unless you count the singing.
It was jarring at the beginning, but this I'm trying to figure out what that means. But then the second, it's the I want to say tadpole swims away, and
Sure.
then we get to see our character. For myself, I was just immediately drawn in at the long shot of him and how little he is significant he looked towards the sides of the building, and then
Yeah.
him walking through the industrial wasteland that he was going through. I was like, we'll obviously get into like the image, the outlook and visuals, but that's what drew me in immediately, just the way the movie looked. And I was like, this is exactly what I expected to see, and why I think, I'm walking in the video store and I see that cover. I want to look at it. I want to see more images like that. So, yeah, the beginning of the movie, I didn't understand. It was definitely jarring, but I didn't expect it to make all total sense in the first 5 minutes.
Right. Exactly.
I think if I never heard the guy, I would have had more of a reaction to him. But with all the history you know about Lynch, you can go into a movie expecting it to be, I guess the best word to say is divisive.
You will not know what happens in the end. Again, if you do want that Lynch movie, that's Dune, because that's a different kind of movie. It's based on a novel. It's like a large scale kind of movie. This, on the other hand, is what I think of as with Lynch and dreams, surrealism, and these parts are a big part of what's influencing him, what he's doing. Right at the beginning, he steps in a puddle. It doesn't make a sound. That's a big tip to me that says we're in this dream world. There are other cues. If you look around the house, what people are doing, they're common thing, but they're not in a normal way. Obviously, by the time we get to those little Cornish hens that start moving and there's like dark black goo spilling out of them, we're very clearly in a different reality at that point. But there were cues even before there. Some things are just a degree or two off from what seems normal, what you're expecting. And that's why I say this movie's all dream the whole way. And it is a nightmare in specific. I mean, Kurt Cobain mentions it with his music too, of my lyrics are abstract. They don't make a lot of sense. They're compelling and you dwell on them, and 3 different people can come away with 3 different interpretations of what Kurt is singing about. He probably has his own interpretation, but he does not tell you and spoon feed it to you with what it is. Lynch is in very much the same way. I believe there is Lynch's reading of this, but to be able to abstract what your meaning is to where other people can have their own takes on it, that's actually kind of special. And while I enjoy something, going back to the art world again, there's Joseph Albers makes these beautiful abstract paintings that are, they're colors on canvases, and some people might sit there and say, well, I don't get it. That looks really easy. My kid could have drawn that. But if you stare at them, they invoke emotions. There's color theory behind that. And how does that make you feel? And it's not about the object of what you're painting. You're portraying a feeling. This is like that. Only, again, I'm going to go back to Francis Bacon again. Francis Bacon depicts some very nightmarish imagery. This is a Francis Bacon painting that you're in. This is a nightmare world. Again, it's unsettling.
I think what makes things more unsettling is something you mentioned just 1 minute ago, is that there are degrees off. It's not a nightmare if it's a brand new world. It's not a nightmare if we're on Arrakis. It's a nightmare because it's close. It's close to what we expect. There are certain things about even him entering the lobby of his apartment building, and there are routine things he does. He checks his pigeonhole for the mail. The elevator is very clearly not a real elevator. Like, this is almost as if it's a fabrication. Like, it's a set, but it's almost like the movie knows it's a set, because this is maybe some type of projection. I love what Lynch does with floor patterns as well, by the way. But then, his entrance into his own flat, right? Around the radiator are pounds of some organic material that kind of looks stringy, looks like noodles, kind of looks like hair. It's tougher than hair, but it's not. You have no idea what it feels like. You just see it. It's dark. You don't know what it is, and it will never be explained to you. But you know that in your house, if you have something dirty around your radiator or your air conditioner, you clean it. Henry doesn't. And on his nightstand is a potted plant with no pot and no leaves.
There's
It's
a
just
doily under it
branch.
too.
It's just a branch stuck in a pile of dirt. And that is interesting enough. You mentioned the idea of dreams. He opens the top drawer of his dresser, and there is a pot with water in it that he makes the decision to pick up some coins and drop it into his pot of water. Does this sound familiar, audience, or Jarrell, of like the things in your dreams that are so close to being normal, and when you're doing them in the dream, oh yeah, this is just what I do. This is normal. I had a dream where to get to my third grade classroom, I had to climb up the side of a building like Spider-Man. And as I was doing it, I was like, this is just how I get to class because it's
Yeah.
so close to being normal.
Do you have dreams like that, Jarrell, where they're like really out there? My wife Mary really has some out there dreams. I find that my own dreams are incredibly realistic in terms of like I went to work, some things happened, and is often like what will happen. And sometimes they're zany, like sometimes people are mixing and matching and doing different things, but I don't have these really like surrealistic kind of things. Do you have these kind of far out dreams?
I have dreams that are weird, and you know, like what you're saying, Dustin. Sometimes you just accept that this is happening. This makes sense, and then you wake up, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I think it's okay? I wouldn't go to Hollywood and say, let's make a movie about it, but I think
Hmm.
that it's because obviously they think I'm ripping off David Lynch. That's why I'm going to say. I'm not saying right now I hate this movie. Make sure I let everybody know that. So, but yeah, I have weird dreams too sometimes.
Okay. This movie, as I mentioned earlier, it's challenged. This movie has to be made over a long period of time. The script is inspired by David Lynch's fear of fatherhood, as we mentioned earlier. Some people believe that maybe this has connections to his own daughter that had severely clubbed feet, and she needed extensive corrective surgery on that. So maybe those fears as a parent are coming through with that. We can only suspect, maybe. And David Lynch was a film student at the AFI to be able to make this movie, and he pitched a whole different idea initially called Garden Back, and it was based on a hunchback kind of figure with vegetation growing on his back. It was a surrealist script about adultery. It featured a continually growing insect representing one man's lust for his neighbor. The script would have been like only 45 minutes long, and the AFI there felt like that was too figurative and non-linear and weird. And so Lynch presented Eraserhead. Somehow that wasn't. Which,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. No, but
Yeah.
even that, he had a hard time selling that. So the dean of the school believed in what he was doing. He got to make this movie, but he ran into trouble. It was financially, it hit a wall. He spent way more money doing this than he thought he would. And the script was only 20 pages long, so they thought it would be easy. And so he had to have production funds donated to him along the way. This movie drags out over 5 years. His childhood friend, Jack Fisk, and his wife, Sissy Spacek, add additional funds to keep the project going. Jack Nance's wife, Catherine Coulson, who worked as a waitress, donated her income to do this. Jack Nance accepted less money. Lynch himself delivered newspapers and lived in the room that you actually see as the little
Oh wow.
little alien baby's room.
Yeah.
So this movie, there's a lot put on the line. And this is what I really admire about this movie. I've seen George Lucas, to make Star Wars, he put up with a lot of people saying, like, that's stupid, George. There's a lot of people who doubted him. They were saying that this is not going to work. There's so many times when it might not have worked. The perseverance to push this through and to make this happen, in spite of all that, in the people that were involved who wanted to make it happen, they liked David, and they wanted to keep making the movie. Jack Nance kept that hair, for 5 years to be able to make this movie.
5 years.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, so
Love his hair.
yeah, so I mean, at any rate, This movie doesn't show when Jack Nance goes through a door. There's one scene where he's in there, and it's like a year and a half later, but that next cut scene is there. So there's a difficult nature in having to rebuild and to reconstruct that set. How many times did he have to put that stick back in the set of dirt? How many times did he have to get the radiator just right and the lighting and all that stuff? It must have been a nightmare to actually make this thing. And it didn't help that everybody was saying, "This is weird, David. This is stupid."
And he's like, that's the point.
You mentioned the lighting, man. This movie is actually, it was Ebert that said it back when him and Siskel were doing their like 2-minute reviews. And he was saying that he did not watch it in theaters. He watched it on home video, and how you won't be able to see some of the details that Lynch wants you to see because of how dark this movie is. But black and white, I mean, I've mentioned it before, it can kind of give you a shortcut toward the avant-garde. But I would say that as far as a world that is meant to be alternate and dark, and maybe one that's not so pleasant to be in, that I fell in love with the lighting of this movie.
I'm the same way, man. I was just looking at like the way the light hits his fro, and you see like the
Oh
dark
yeah,
part lower and the highlights above. I was just mesmerized by that too. Like in the room, the dim lighting of the room itself, and there's like certain lights on like his face, but everything else is like black around that. I just thought it looked as nightmarish as a lot of other things are. Like some of those scenes were just, iconic to me.
Russell, did you find like it was harsh on your eyes watching it? I almost felt like there's an amount of like, I don't want to call it struggle, but it is almost pushing your audience to accept that, hey, Dorothy's not going to open the door to Technicolor Munchkinland. It's going to be black and white and hard. Like, did you find a struggle with that, Russ?
I felt like I watched this movie in pieces, and I wanted a very dark room to watch this in. And I started watching it in a very dark room, and then I came back to watch another segment later, and it wasn't dark, and I was kind of bothered by that because I wanted to be in a dark room so I could, like you said, I had a lot more clarity. I would say watch it in the dark.
I would say don't watch it if you're eating like squash or some type of like gooey substance meal.
Cream
It's
corn.
it's not a movie. It's not a movie to eat during. No, it's not. It's not a dinner and a movie at the same time kind of thing. It's like, here's
Right.
some spaghetti.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie is the whole meet the parents thing because I'm a big fan of that movie with Ben Stiller, and I'm like, I thought he had it bad, but
Yeah.
that whole scene from the uncomfortable silences to the catatonic grandmother to I guess overly sexual mother when she broke the news from him. Like
Mm,
I was like, you should have jumped out the window long ago, man. But what was keeping me entertained was that dad, man. Mr. X, I think they say his name is. Like,
yeah.
or he introduced himself as Bill. He had me getting the most chuckles in the whole movie when they was just two at the table together, and he was just staring at him with that like manic face, and it was just that awkwardness compared to like Rob De Niro. I think I would prefer that for the with Robert De Niro giving me
Oh
a
yeah.
one of those like a polygraph test than that. But it was funny to me. What did you guys think of that part?
There is a bit of, we will say it's the lightheartedness of it, or the bit of humor that you get out of it is really, I think, just a reflection of that's the most dialogue and the most lines in the movie is that scene.
Hmm.
And it does remind you that this is close to reality or close to our universe, but a little off. There is an idea that Jack Nance or Henry is reserved and awkward. And there are many people that are reserved and awkward, but maybe not to that extent. You don't know much about Mary yet. You don't know anything about the parents yet. And so you are bombarded with like, think about meeting somebody's parents anytime is
Hmm.
you might think the worst. And in this case, he gets something that's just relatively strange. And it's the strangeness out of it that I think gives us a bit of delight, is that, oh, this is interesting for us to sink our teeth into, and things that could seem benign are made stranger, based on the choices of our filmmaker. The idea of the mom, overtly sexual mom, which doesn't show up until the very end of that scene, is making the salad, tosses it with the dressing, then puts it in the lap of Grossmutter to then have her do it.
Mm-hmm.
In any other movie, you might consider that, and hey, this is a big might, but in any other movie with like a loving family or a normal family or whatever you want to say, that might be considered sweet. But in this, your head is cocked. What is going on with this? Then the plumber Bill, Mr. X, the dad, is taking great care in basting and buttering those little hens, whatever they are. And they come out and they're bleeding goo, whatever that is. So I did enjoy the scene, but I think the reason that it stands out is because you actually get to hear verbal interaction, which we're kind of starved for.
Yeah, that's probably why I liked it so much because finally people are talking, and I'm surprised that not only that the movie took so long to make, but that the script was actually that long, 20
Mm.
pages. Because it should, from what we're looking at, I'm like I was shocked that it wasn't like 15 pages. No one's really talking. Maybe he double spaced it. I don't know.
There's the idea of in art like negative space, or there's the idea that like when you're lifting, you focus on the negative, right? And there's so much of this movie where Henry comes in and he lies face down on his bed perpendicular, and he's kind of staring at the radiator, and you watch him stare at the radiator for 60 full seconds, which doesn't seem that long until you're in it. And
Mhm.
and the thing that lengthens these benign pieces is the grating sounds. Russell, I know you've got something to say about sound design with this movie. Is that the sounds of, it's like a jet engine and also a storm and like sheet metal being scraped against. You are physically made uncomfortable when you are watching something that is generally routine. Throughout the entire movie, there is silence, and when you get silence, it actually makes you even more uncomfortable. So I think that the sound here also allows those gaps in the script where it's like, how did they get 20 pages out of this? Is because they focus on the simple so frequently.
Well, about sound, Lynch worked with Alan Splett in a design studio, and then they just fabricated their own soundproofing by taking insulation and blanketing in their studio, and they spent a year creating and editing sound effects, a whole year. The sound effects are extremely layered. Some of them have as many as 15 different sounds layered on top of themselves simultaneously using multiple rolls. So they created a whole variety of ways for the scene, which the bed slowly dissolves into the pool of liquid, and like Lynch and Splett inserted a microphone inside a plastic bottle, or they floated it in a bathtub to record the sound of blown air through the bottle being recorded.
Great name for a sound designer, Split.
And the sounds were further augmented by alterations with pitch, reverb, frequency. If you're a sound junkie, this movie is for you. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and because there's so little speaking, you will notice it all the more. It is front and center.
Yeah, that scene at the family's house, it sounded like two mice going at it with all the squeaking you were hearing.
That's right. Well, and I was worried that we'd get no payoff. We then see that it's the little puppies suckling at the mama, right? But
Hmm.
you would not have known. And I'm used to it by now. I would say the closest thing as far as Lynchian to this that I've ever seen is not the first two seasons of Twin Peaks, but The Return that came out in 2016, 2017. That is a show I don't recommend. I had to watch it. I needed to watch it because I was such a fan. But there's stuff in there that is just trippy, bizarre. Whoa, what am I even watching? And that's where I learned to become okay with a lack of resolution. But we got a payoff for that sound. We also got a payoff. Were you guys expecting at all to get a payoff of what Eraserhead means?
I have a complaint about the payoff coming so early, but I was like, oh, that makes sense. But then the movie keeps going. So
It is pretty late.
I did like that. Yeah. It wasn't the end though. I thought that I will say when we get to that part of the show where I would have
Right.
placed that part. But yeah, I thought that was not expected that they were going to explain why they call him that. And it's so simple that I was like, why didn't I think of that?
It's an alarming scene when his head just falls off.
Hmm.
So his head is replaced by the baby head of the deformed baby, and then true Lynchian kind of way, it shifts to a whole different. It's now a prosthetic head, and the kid picks it up and runs with it, and Paul's at the counter and, it's like, Paul, counter. Like, actually, there were moments of humor there, which was unexpected for this movie. So, Lynch goes there. He hits a lot of things. The woman across the hallway is sexy. And so that's always disarming when all this weird stuff's going on, to add, feelings of like, oh, this is sexy. We saw this in Mulholland Drive. There's a lot of weird stuff. The mood's all weird, but then there's something sexy. You're confusing fear, discomfort, like titillation. There's all these things happening at the same time. Again, Dreams can manage this. Film rarely goes to here. I think you could say, like, this feels like the art film that you go into the Museum of Modern Art and you walk in the film room and you go like, that's extremely disturbing and I don't understand why, I don't understand what's going on here. I went to an art film festival at college with my wife, and I felt like I feel really dumb because I don't get what's going on. Like after repeated videos, I'm just like, I feel stupid. Like, why am I not getting this? There's a degree of trying to make something that it's not. My art teacher was later telling me of when they were looking at Duchamp's art, which was a Dada kind of thing of, like, it's very whimsical. And I was trying to find this almost inner meaning. What is that symbolic for? How did he place these slips of paper and to the way to compose this in this manner? What's the methodology? What's the meaning behind this? And he said, look, he was just throwing it up and then making it seem random. And then he actually placed them to look like they were more random than actually when he like, it is whimsy. It is explosion. It is, what happens if I wrap a bicycle and all these found pieces of like carpentry and like, a stool and wrap it all with a garbage bag and then put bungee cords around it. What is it? What is that then? And so I have to justify a lot of what I do as an architect and to say there's a great deal of purpose with everything you're doing because it comes at a great deal of expense. So to me, it's hard for me to also let go when you enter this art world.
Yes.
And it requires me to remember my modern art teacher at Tennessee and say, that's awesome, but let's just go look at it this way of like, this is a different way of recording film. This is a different way of putting the painting on the canvas and to see how it feels, to do something that somebody hasn't done before in a different way, not because of some great purpose or meaning. And, the notion, and movies love to portray people in black turtlenecks in museums saying like, this is a metaphor for whatever. So often some of the greatest art is so not that. Like, I think you mentioned the pretentiousness. I think some of the people who might like this movie could come off as those black turtleneck guys in the museum sitting there in front of a painting, when the reality is it didn't mean half of that to them.
Yeah.
This movie is like a rebel movie. This comes out at midnight showings. So back in the 70s, you had to, this doesn't just get put on a regular theater. If you're familiar with like John Waters and Pink Flamingos in 1972, there's a lot of troubling images about that, or Female Trouble from 1974 from him. Rocky Horror Picture Show is another movie we did, which was a midnight showings movie. There's a degree of, this isn't for everybody. This is the punk rock kind of approach. It's the underground sort of thing. But word got out, people wanted to see it. Now, it didn't have the run that Rocky Horror Picture Show did in terms of its, that movie, true cult classic. But word got out enough, and people who liked this sort of thing were influenced by it. Mel Brooks saw it and actually led to him directing Elephant Man, as you mentioned earlier, his second movie. Mel Brooks saw it as an adolescent nightmare and responsibility. I like it. That's a comedian seeing this and saying, like, I get what you're doing here. So George Lucas liked it and wanted him to direct Return of the Jedi. Lynch turned that down. Swiss surrealist H.R. Geiger, who we've covered in a couple of movies, said that it's the closest thing to realizing his own visions in films. Lynch declined to work with Geiger on Dune because he felt like Geiger had stolen his own ideas. So there are some massively creative people out here. Eraserhead, even if you don't feel good about it, what it has done is it has broken the rules of what a conventional movie can be done. And that is something that would have only happened in the 70s. There's a sense of movies and point, the code is gone. You don't have to stick to the Hays Code, and nor are you chained to the rules of what a box office can be. This midnight showing, there are no rules. There is more freedom in terms of what you can do. The censors aren't here. You are not trying to get approved to an R rating, to an X rating. That's not what's going on here. So this film is also a result of a certain point in time for when it was made. And for that reason alone, it is worth watching, because this film isn't happening later or earlier.
Deep, man.
It is very cool to hear some of these stories you talked about with these other artists. And I remember that story about Mel Brooks giving him the green light to direct Elephant Man. And there's more to that story where the producer, or sorry, somebody had dragged him to one of these midnight showings, saying, I think it was Stewart Kornfeld, dragged him to this midnight showing, and Mel Brooks kept asking Stewart to move him around the theater because the people in the theater were scary to him. The freaks that are into Eraserhead, these people are going to hurt me. Like this is what he thought. Russ, it was because this movie is so free to talk about how you feel about it. And Lynch tells you should be free to think about what you got out of it, which I love, by the way. That I found a clip of them interviewing people coming out of the theaters after they saw it, an old clip of what you thought about this movie. And the reason I did any research on this at all is because I thought to myself, well, it's not like we're talking about the plot here. we're talking about how it makes you feel. So there were 13 people they talked to, and some of their lines were, beats the hell out of me. I got to think about it a while. Person number 2, terrible. Didn't like it. The person number 3 goes, I thought it was the ultimate suspense film. I kept waiting for something to happen, and it never did. Person number 4 goes, very entertaining, very lively film. Best thing I've seen all year. Okay, so way spread across the gamut. Person number 5 goes, bizarre film. I did not enjoy it. The 6th person just sighs at the camera and walks away.
That person's name is Chad Robinson.
Right. Yeah. Person number 11, very good acting. I've seen it 8 times, and that's about enough. This is a nightmare. I compare it to early Fellini, but I like Fellini better. And here's the thing: I'm not a surrealist. I enjoy what this movie can do for you, but that's not my genre of of choice. But I feel like I'm close to understanding what it is. But the freedom to have your own understanding that's kind of what I'm about. But this is unlike most movies we do. Unlike most movies in general, this allows you to just kind of let it wash over you. You take what you want. An audience, you can take what you want from this. And we gave you the caveat. Russell gave you the caveat at the front of this movie, or at the front of this show, I should say. This might not be for you. That's okay.
Add Stanley Kubrick to that list of people who love this movie too, by the way. So some amazingly influential people loved it. You guys talked about the interior settings of the families and all these things that are going on with the rooms. I was fascinated by the exterior world, these industrial machines, this wasteland. I thought it was in the future, or like a dream of like a future post-apocalyptic kind of situation. It's at what is now the Beverly Center Mall in Los Angeles is now there, but at that time, obviously, it is a wasteland, if you will. David Lynch was inspired by his own time, living in a neighborhood in Philadelphia, where his family spent 5 years living there in an atmosphere of absolute violence, hate, and filth. He said that area was rife with crime, inspiring the bleak backdrop of this film. And during that period of his life, Lynch said that, I saw so many things in Philadelphia I just couldn't believe. I saw like a woman out there grabbing her own breast in the streets, like talking like a baby, saying my breasts hurt. Like that kind of thing will set you back. You can't get that out of your head. You can't unsee these things. There's a little tip of the hat to they don't say the street name in the movie, but 2416 is prominently posted on Mary's parents' house. That is 2416 Poplar Street in Philadelphia. This is not a ringing endorsement. I've been to Philadelphia, and I had a much better time than David Lynch is describing here, but where David Lynch grew up in Philadelphia also helps influence and shape this movie in a, like he said, an unforgettable way.
I wonder what he would think of Philadelphia now, especially when they win any championships. They do a lot of things worse than grabbing their breasts, I'll tell you that.
They got to grease the light poles because they don't want people climbing them.
They got to make sure that the fans don't eat the manure on the ground too as a dare.
Oh God, Jarrell, I gotta ask. Uh, did you think when you submitted this shortlist to us that you would be opening the door to the most surreal, open-ended podcast I think this show has done all year and maybe ever?
I guess that's kind of a trend sort of thing I've proved. So no, I did not think that it was going to happen. Actually, I thought the chances of them picking the one movie I didn't see on the list was going to be, a 1 out of 5 chance. But
Yeah.
when they did, I'm like, you know what? This is finally going to happen. I'm finally going to see a David Lynch movie, and maybe I can go forward with that with his filmography at that point. Since this was your first time seeing this movie, Dustin, and you've seen his other stuff, do you think I went the right way with starting with the beginning, or do you think that I should have found a more I don't know what I want to say palatable, but like more of a cohesive film to start with in his filmography?
You know what? It's hard to say this because it's in retrospect, having seen a lot of his work. But I think you now know what the extreme of pushing the limits in 1977, or I guess we should say 71 to 76, because you said it took 5 years
Hmm.
to make this, right? And then it gets released. Is that you now know the extremes and what this guy is capable of. So if you know what David Lynch is capable of, then you can watch the other movies. And Russell, you had brought up the idea of seeing him progress as a filmmaker, things that are more palatable. You know, there are staples of what David Lynch does, and then there is Twin Peaks. You can see that he's capable of something like this, and all of a sudden, your first watch of Twin Peaks, the series, will have you understanding the mystery and the potential of what the world could be. But luckily, unlike Eraserhead, like it's honed in, and you're not quite so scattershot spread out.
Jack Nance, you will still get some Jack Nance in Twin Peaks, though. Lynch likes to go back to his people more than once.
And one of them will be one of my hidden gems.
Yeah, he is the Kevin Smith of his time.
He loves that. Yeah,
Honestly, his hair is reminiscent
Mhm.
of.
David Lynch's hair was one of the best heads of hair in Hollywood.
Before we go forward, let's talk about the song In Heaven. This is a haunting song. Again, I've gone through all this video, the imagery sets you up, the lighting, but there's something comforting, but it's also not at the same time. And I thought it was fun. The Pixies have apparently performed moments of that in their shows.
Big fan of the Pixies. I wouldn't say big fan. I prefer their first 4 albums than what they're doing now, but what can you do? I found the story of the actual writer of that song, Peter Ivers, really interesting and tragic at the same time.
Go on.
Yeah, he was murdered actually, and no one knows it was unsolved. And he was like
Hmm.
only in his 30s. So they found him dead in his apartment or something like that.
Well, I hope a
Oh
little boy
wow.
got his head and took it back to the hotel.
Yeah, I don't know what they'd make because his last name's not Eraser. So since it's Ivers, I don't like maybe they made eyes out of it, something like that. I don't know, but it's I think the song is actually got like a cross between haunting and beautiful at the same time. Especially when that girl with a bad case the mumps sings it.
Oh man.
I
Yeah.
guess she's the radiator lady.
The
Yeah,
Radiator Lady. Yeah.
I don't know what was wrong with her, but I'm assuming it's not her singing it. Maybe she's lip syncing the song, and the actual
Definitely.
artist is singing it. But it was really portrayed in a really beautiful way both times she's on screen. Even if she is stepping on like spermicides at the same time, I'm just captivated by her performance.
These things can be read in so many ways, but I saw this as being like an unwanted child and what it does to a whole family. I'm not going to try and get too political, whether pro-choice, pro-life, or whatever, but when a child is not wanted, there's few things as tragic as that. It extends far beyond the parents. It is a very difficult environment for the child and for everybody there. So there's a tragedy component with this that I also can't help but sit there and see. Like, children deserve to be loved and taken care of, and far, far too often they don't get that. And isn't that one of the greatest tragedies ever? Going back to a movie that you brought up earlier with Parenthood, they will say that you have to have a license to get a fishing license. You have to have a license to drive a car. But you know what? They'll let any idiot have a child.
Great Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. Whoa, so deep, dude.
You're burning that, dude. Yeah.
So
they basically told him, "Hey, you know what you did in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? Do that again." But yeah, but go on. Sorry.
To me, that is the real nightmare. This is kind of a real thing. There are people who don't want their children, and the infanticide of killing your child. We see them in the news of when somebody kills their child, and it's sad when somebody gets into a situation where they don't want their child. The child is not wanted. It is just one of those things. It's gut wrenching. That's why I said this is not a film that's designed to make you feel good.
Yeah.
Boy, it brings up visceral feelings. I can't get it out of my head. It makes me think about it.
That's going with the thought that it's his child. So I'm on the fence. I'm on the side that it's not his kid, but still.
Admiral Backbar that might be the dad.
Yeah. I want to go on the record saying that I am anti-killing babies.
Definitely.
Yeah, there we go.
Whether they're yours or not.
Let's get out some awards, you guys.
I'm ready.
All right,
Jarrell, MVP.
Oh, I mentioned him before, and I'll say it again. MVP is easily Mr. X, a.k.a. Bill, the dad, because he was a character, to say the least.
Well, dinner's getting cold. We may as well eat. Dustin, how about you?
We were talking a little bit about like film snobbery earlier, but I think for me it's sound design, which is a combo of Lynch and Alan Splett. That is what you have in the highest volume consistently through this in two different ways. Through this movie is just these unsettling sounds. I had mentioned earlier about this being like alternate universe, or this being just sort of a nightmare type world. The thing that keeps you uncomfortable are these sounds. And the first adjective that came into my mind when I saw Jack Nance walking through these weird landscapes is he supposed to be here? Or is he going to portray being uncomfortable the whole movie? And it was the latter. Actually, technically, it's both. He's supposed to be there and he's uncomfortable. So the sound design keeps you there.
He's like, I'm not able to be here today. So,
and I'm going David Lynch here because he made everything happen. I mean, he was making set designs. He was involved with the lighting. I mean, it's a student project, basically. So where you have everything go through him. So it's hard not to pick the guy. Best supporting actor, Jarrell.
I'm going to go with the bum that saw the kid pick up the head because he's the only person in the movie that did anything that was relatable to me.
Okay.
His reaction was the most natural that I saw from anyone in this film.
There's not much of that to go around. Okay, Dustin, how about you? Best supporting.
This is where I gave the credit to Mr. X, Alan Joseph as Bill, or Mr. X. He gave us someone with lines to hang on to. And his talking drives that scene, and it allows the other actors in that scene to jump in with their weirdness.
And I'm going to go with Judith Anna. Sorry. My best supporting is going to go to Judith Anna Roberts. She's the beautiful girl from across the hall. The movie picks up to me a lot, and you're feeling a lot of different things. So adding that sexiness while also being in this very dysregulated kind of environment makes you feel weird. And he in all three of the movies that we've sorry, not doing again, but the other Lynch movies we've covered, he does this in spades. So this is something he'll come back to as well. So I think
he knows what he likes.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about her enough, but she was actually any girl that would come in the house in a place and see that baby and still be like, I'm down for this. She definitely was a real one.
She gave it a good consideration. He had to be like, let's not look there.
Yeah, I'm going to try to suffocate this kid because it's basically blocking me.
I have a feeling she looked at her watch and been like, it's as good as it's going to get at this time of day.
But then she still found another suitor later. So, I mean, I guess she didn't actually like him. I guess she just wanted anybody, but still,
I don't know. You get submerged
what you
into the
get.
pit once or twice, and then you might go looking for other suitors.
Yeah.
Right.
Hidden gem Jarrell.
I'm gonna go with the man pulling the levers on the planet because I think he was up to something.
Dustin, how about you? Hidden gem.
My hidden gem is a combo. It's Catherine Coulson, who you said was working as a server or waitress during this time. I didn't know that because Catherine Coulson is actually rewarded with one of the most iconic and well loved roles in Lynch's filmography, which is as the Log Lady in Twin Peaks. An extremely popular character, and one thing that a lot of people in today's day and age don't know is that the original run of Twin Peaks, the Log Lady would give you a little bit of a recap and an introduction to the show, and that doesn't exist on the Netflix version of Twin Peaks. You have to find like DVD versions of it in order to get that. But she's important to the lore, and was one of the few who could come back for the return. I thought that was cool. And then this is just for the Twin Peaks heads out there. This movie shows us the arm and the Garmin Bosia. So if you recognize that in this movie, make sure to hit us up in the email and ask us about the Garmin Bosia later, listeners.
Anytime I hear Log Lady, my head goes to the Ren and Stimpy. Log rolls downstairs, rolls over your
I
hair,
was thinking
rolls
that
over your
too.
neighbor's dog.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
great for a snack.
It
It
fits
sits on your back.
It's
It's log, log, log.
That was so funny. I was thinking the exact same thing. I just
It's
didn't want to
big,
sing it,
it's
but
heavy, it's wood, it's log, it's log. It's better than bad. It's good.
Thank you for finishing that.
No problem.
My hidden gem is gonna be the effects for the deformed child. The mutant baby was apparently created by things we don't know. Some people have speculated as an embalmed fetus of a calf. David Lynch never really confirmed whether what this was. Afterwards, they had like a funeral for the prop deformed child. Jack Nance called it Spike, and then the rest of the crew would call him Spike. This mysterious, massively disturbing piece. I mean, it's like the face crawler, like an alien. It's just like there's something so real and like detailed about it. There probably are, I don't know, embalmed or dead animal organs there. I don't know. There's probably real stuff in there, and it's gross and then scary. If you said you wanted a big crescendo at the end of the movie, I think they gave it to you when he cuts that off. I mean, we're all expecting him to have some kind of worm body or something, or maybe you were expecting his. What were you expecting? Nothing. I wasn't.
I agree with that. That was that actual baby itself, like many images in the movie, is forever in my mind.
Yeah. It was pretty scary when it was sick too. Like I had all those like welts all over it
That
too.
happened quick, man. That happened so
It
fast.
did. It escalated quickly.
And well struck with the organ music. Because nowadays you're hit with a big like blast of a jump scare, like deep brassy sound, and essentially the only music in this movie is Fats Waller organ playing, and you're hit with almost a gothic down down like when the welts come. It happens a couple times in the movie. Once again, great sound, and where they use music, it's creepy.
Jarrell, we're gonna re-ask you to recast somebody and put somebody else in their place. Who's it gonna be?
So I had two choices for one person, and I know under the circumstances they might have been too young to play the role. But my first choice would be John C. Reilly as his Dr. Stephen Brule character from if you guys ever watched Tim and Eric spinoff he does on Comedy Cartoon Network, they have the same kind of look to them. So especially with the hair. But I understand that John C. Reilly was probably like a teenager at the time, so it wouldn't work. Also, I'm a big fan of the movie House Party, and I never knew that when Play says the line to him, like when they're rapping back and forth at the party, and he's like, "Are you gonna pick me or Eraserhead?" I didn't know possibly he was referencing this movie. So maybe you can get Kid from Kid and Play to put in there. It's
He's got the
different
hair. He's got
film
the hair.
altogether, but he definitely looks more like an eraser. Yeah.
Yeah, Dustin, how about you?
I don't know what it is that has me on the same wavelengths as our guests sometimes. It might just be that I'm in tune with puppets way more than I thought. I chose
I
John
get that a
C.
lot.
Reilly. I chose
What?
John C. Reilly. Not for that role you're talking about, but I know what you're referencing. And I thought to myself, if this were a modern remake, especially for a comedian that might want to escape a typecast type of role, to give him the range to play this reserved character would be interesting. This is the third time that I have recast the exact same person as our guest in the same role. And I just think that's crazy. So, Jarrell, did you and I just become best friends?
Yep.
Now,
We should build bunk beds and get pedicures, something like
so,
that.
so much space for activities. Now,
So much
that
space in
actually
here now,
wasn't
yeah.
because you came up with that. I had to mention it, and I in 30 seconds had to come up with a backup recast, which is, hey, John Lynch has a type, and the woman across the way in apartment 27 is exactly what we expect. But for the time frame, if they had more of a budget and if they wanted to get a little quirkier, and he's known for using very talented musicians in acting roles, it'd be interesting if that was Cher.
I like it. If we could only turn back time
Oh, come on.
and make that happen. All right. All right. You both have Mr. Cellophane, John C. Reilly on here. I'm gonna go
Unbelievable.
I'm gonna go a different direction on this one. I did a twofer. I said if you made this movie with more money, what if you had John Cazale, who does not have the hair to pull off the Eraserhead hair? He's gonna need a hairpiece. But John Cazale, and for Charlotte Stewart as Mary, I'm gonna put in Sissy Spacek in there, who was mentioned earlier as somebody who helped get this movie funded. And I thought, boy, she'd be good too.
Oh, for those who don't know, you want to tell people who John Cazale is?
John Cazale, like, he's only alive until 1978, but the man is like, he does The Deer Hunter, he does Dog Day Afternoon, he almost everything he does gets awarded with these nominees for Oscar
the best
nominations.
Short run
He was in The
of
Conversation.
films ever.
I mean, even Daniel Day-Lewis's like clout might not be as good as Cazale's, again, short run, densely done in the 70s, taken from us way too soon. So, best shot, Jarrell.
I'm gonna sit and go with the iconic movie poster itself. Like when all the eraser shearings are behind him and they use that as a shot of the DVD poster. Like I love that. So I'm gonna go with that one.
It is an iconic thing. You're right. Absolutely. Dustin, how about you? Best shot.
I actually was on that same length, and I thought that was really smart. Eraser shavings kind of wiped away off the desk, and then you see that shot. But there was something even more mysterious to me that I liked, is that small curio cabinet. Very small, almost looks like the size of a music box.
Okay.
It almost looks the size of a music box, where he opens those cabinet doors and he places the little, whatever that item was, he places it on the sill of that little mini curio, and it's just shadow back there. It's just mysterious enough to like draw me in.
That might be one of the moments that I think when we're at Mary's house and her mom grills them, he has the nosebleed. Do you mind getting married? No. And there's this cutaway for me for this shot where it goes up onto the wall and kind of to like this little piece on the wall. And then as camera zooms in, we flash forward ahead. There are these very unconventional cuts. We see it in Mulholland Drive. There's certainly an iconic scene. I'm not going to spoil the movie, where there's like a shot of an object that changes things in the whole plot. These transitions are here earlier in his career. That was my favorite one, but there are these moments where there's a big change, whether you go into the hot tub. There's these moments where it's just like, wow, you have no money. That's a pretty ambitious thing, how you're panning, zooming, and there's something dreamlike about that in itself, where the camera is yet another reinforcement of this language, this world, with these free rules, if you will. It's reinforcing the camera work as well. So some of those cutscenes are amazing. That's my favorite of. Best scene, Jarrell.
I guess I'm gonna go with when Henry and the radiator later embrace at the end, and it just like it's all white background, and it just like immediately cuts to black before the credits. I just thought that was like a really great resolution for our character that we were following this whole time.
Dustin, how about your best scene?
I'd like to kind of second that by saying that even though he's married to Mary, they don't have any warmth or love or even embrace. And now he does have a love scene or a sex scene with the woman across the way. That is very purposeful and creepy because they're in the bed/pit. But that embrace with the lady from the radiator, and he closes his eyes in like some kind of resolution. Like this is something, finally, he's getting a little bit of warmth. That is so meaningful, I think. Is that's the first time he has any type of connection is to this fantasy thing. Initially, I was going to pick the interesting, sexual tryst with the wet pit in the bed. But I think I'll just second what Jarrell said, is that scene gives you, it doesn't wrap up the movie, but it just gives you something different at the very end. And it a little light in the darkness.
I'm going to go with the wet pit in the bed. So there you go.
There we go.
It's super surreal. I mean,
The wet pit.
Just left with nothing but her hair floating on top of the water. I mean, as if things weren't weird enough. They just got
Did
weird.
you think for a moment that hair on top of the water might separate and skim off and then fall off the bed into the pile around the radiator?
Once the chicken starts to move when you cut into it and stuff, I mean, really everything's on the table, Dustin. So, I mean, I was not willing to put my chips on the table for any one thing to go down. So, best wardrobe or makeup moment, Jarrell.
It's gonna be something that we're probably gonna all like have the same one on, but it's either gonna be a tie between the mumps, radiator lady, and the baby itself. Those two things are just they're moving. They moved into my brain, and that's like we're here till you get dementia. We're not going away.
Okay, all right, Dustin. How about you? Best wardrobe or makeup moment?
All good things. I'm going with Jack Nance's hair. But awesome. The light shining through the fro, well done. But I think the thing that really matters about this is it's close to being conventional. It's close, not quite. A little too long, a little funny, and that should give you the clue.
Do you guys remember that movie, at the Addams Family, and that one humpback guy that was dancing with
Yes.
Wednesday?
I love the Addams
Hair's
Family.
kind of the same. Yeah, that hair kind of like that.
It's like ZZ Top's beard was turned upside down and put on top of his head. But so I'm also going with the hair, and it's interesting knowing Catherine Coulson did her husband at the time, Jack Nance's hair throughout those 5 years in order to do that, and it involved picking and pulling his hair, and it would kind of hurt, and he did not enjoy that process. So Coulson later joked that her duties as his hairdresser ruined their marriage, and that's why they no longer were married. However, they are good friends, and so she's saying that kind of in jest.
Okay, I'm like, wow, she's petty, man.
No,
but, okay.
she's saying it with humor. Change one thing, Jarrell.
Okay, this is what we're all ready for me to say this. So the scene when he turns into a pencil at the end, I would move that to the end of the film, and that's the end of the movie. Move the baby killing scene to before that, and maybe that would help specify that Henry was actually the baby's father, because when his head pops off, the little alien thing comes out of him. So that proves that they have some sort of like resemblance to each other at that point.
Okay.
And then end it with that.
Interesting. You teased that a little bit earlier, but that's an interesting take there. Dustin, how about
but
you?
it's too close to giving an actual answer. It might make people think that they have the right answer. No, it's a good choice.
Dustin, how about you? Change one thing.
My change one thing is, Lynch has Lynch had a very special care when it came to music, even investing in and having his own like recording label for a while. And the song that the lady in the radiator sings, it did not captivate me. I have all this experience with Julie Cruz and Rebecca Del Rio and Nine Inch Nails and the Chromatics, like all of these bands that have collaborated with Lynch. And I think this was just like too early for him to have those connections yet. That song doesn't do it for me. The feeling of it, I understand, but if I had to change something, it would be that dream sequence or that desire or whatever that represents could have been something different. And that's, of a lot of strange things in this movie, that's the one I attach to.
What song would you have picked instead? that was around in 77.
That's
Okay.
the thing, is we can play around with like time dilation with all types of, well, what if I pulled from the 90s or something? But they would have to be original, because that song was original for this. So I just know how in tune to music David Lynch is, and there's something about, if you are familiar with the bravado, he also likes to linger too long on music scenes or set pieces in his media. And so I think that just could have been bigger. He normally doesn't go subtle with music, and I thought he could have gone bigger.
Change one thing for me. I think I want to see Henry try to reach Mary at her parents' house. Maybe he looks in on her and she's despondent, depressed, catatonic, dark circles around her eyes in bed, not coming back. Again, we got a pretty good gist that she's walking out. She's not coming back. I guess I'm focused on that. You know, how does this affect each of the people? Mary's out of the story. We don't see her anymore. This movie's all about a nightmare. Why not drive that knife in and twist it a little bit more and show how this is totally demolished Mary forever?
Yeah, screw her. I was like, get that suitcase out under the bed a lot faster. I did not like her at all.
No, we'll talk about a scene that lingers a little too long. Is her trying so hard to get that thing, because you don't know what she's doing, because the movie's weird.
Actually, that is one thing I did see coming. Was like, she's getting a suitcase.
You don't have to lie to me, Russell.
But I
I don't believe you either.
But I will tell you this much: it was packed and ready to go. Was my big notice thing.
Yes.
It's like she's ready for that. She did not throw stuff in a bag and make a big production. Like if you wanted to linger, you would linger on, well, where's my toothbrush? Okay, I'm gonna need that, and I'm gonna definitely need. I'm taking the paper towels. I'm sorry. I'm gonna need those where I'm going, and you'd have a discussion of like.
Yeah, she packed up like before they went to bed.
Yeah, that's what I noticed out of that. The best quote, not a lot of speaking in this movie, Jarrell.
Yeah, that was tough. And obviously, I like everything the dad said. But I decided to sum it up instead of doing like a whole monologue here. I'm just going to go with when him and Henry were talking at first at the dinner table. And he says, like, "Oh, Henry, so what do you know?" And he was like, "Oh, I don't know much of anything." I thought that was a cute, like back and forth there.
All right, Dustin, how about you? Best quote.
I'm going for him as well, and it is, people think pipes grow in their home. Well, they sure as hell don't. Look at my knees. Look at my knees. Are you hungry?
I'm going to go with the lyrics of the song. When Radiator Lady sings, "In heaven, everything is fine. In heaven, everything is fine. You've got your good things, and I've got mine. In heaven, everything is fine." Despite the comforting words, it's kind of haunting in how it's presented. So, talk about things I won't forget out of this movie. A severe case of the mumps go a long way to making it possible, but also this song will be burned in my brain there. And I would like to see the Pixies perform this. Jarrell, please tell us one more time where we can find out more about the Puppet Perspective show and where we can see it.
You can always find us on YouTube. You just type in Puppet Perspective, you'll find us there. And make sure you are subscribing to our channel to get all our content. And we also have our podcast where you go to anywhere, you listen to podcasts. We are on Apple mostly and BuzzFeed and everything like that. But if you Google us, you'll find us there. And at this point right now, we're on a bit of a hiatus as we are trying to get our staff up again. I'm looking for possible more puppets, but in the meantime, we are working next month on converting our show to also an animation form. I'm actually working on making ourselves animated, and possibly we will be having people as guests for podcasts in the future with myself and to promote what they're doing. So look for that there. And if you have any desire to be on our show, which I appreciate that, you can always contact us at njhabbitradio@gmail.com.
We've come full circle on a 5-star scale with half-star intervals. Jarrell, what are you going to give Eraserhead?
Dang, I decided instead of go with stars, I'm going to go with an object in the film itself. So, based on the fact that Dustin helped me understand what this movie is even about with the synopsis, I raised my rating to a 2 and 3/4 out of 5 disembodied heads.
Okay. I thought you were going to go with radiators. You went dark on us. I like that. Dustin, how about you? On a 5-star scale, or you can say disembodied heads, how many?
5
How many?
heads.
5 heads.
So out of heads, this movie has so much artistic volume. It has inspired many. I think it opened up this show. It opened up how we think about movies. There's a lot of things that are really positive about this. It's not normal for me to let my recommendation affect my rating, but I don't recommend this movie. There are things where when your friend says, I don't like horror movies, and you might say, like, oh, well, yeah, well, you could watch this one horror movie. But if someone says, I like movies, and then you said, do you want to watch a surrealist movie with a very strange plot and barely any dialogue? Your friend, if you put them through this, they might not like you anymore. So I'm letting my recommendation affect my star rating, which is 2.5. There's so much going on that's cool about this movie, but this isn't something that you can really share with that many people. I think all of its value is wrapped up in those 2.5 heads, and there's a lot of value there, but that's as high as I can go.
Wow.
So I had mixed feelings on this one, and I let you know from the beginning. I still have mixed feelings. Objectively, I am not a critic, and I do not lead with this. This movie is important. It is aesthetically effective. It does what it has accomplished in the same way that Francis Bacon accomplished what he wants to with his art. I don't enjoy that though. It's uncomfortable, and I think it's a 4.5 as a film, but I give it a 1.5 on how I respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I saw it. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think I enjoyed this conversation even more than I enjoyed watching it. But it is horrifying, and not in the horrifying way of like, oh gosh, is Michael Myers going to get her? No, it's horrifying and unsettling, and you can't unsee it once you've seen it kind of way. I will say that this is a good way to do that, rather than Human Centipede, where it's just like shoving it in your face and it's just a bunch of horrible things and imagery. But this movie is not Human Centipede, and I will give it, like I said, this kind of dual rating. That's a 3-star swing, but I'm going to say 4.5 objectively and 1.5 as I feel about it.
I feel like what's interesting about this film is it reminded me of 2 movies that two things that it influenced. One is it had the imagery of a movie like The Lake House, if you guys ever seen that, but minus the structured storyline, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I watched a show called Atlanta with Donald Glover. And by the 3rd season, you could tell how influenced he was by David Lynch's work, where it started to get more surreal with the storylines and stuff like that. I didn't like that because you're so invested in the first 2 storylines and the 2 seasons of the characters. I don't know why he decided to go that direction. That was just me. But I think this movie. What do you guys think? I think this movie works perfectly, like for like a music video, because I was like, yeah, I feel like the band Tool would be really was influenced by this movie and did music videos like that. But you guys were saying that you wouldn't recommend people to see it.
I would.
On the opposite side of that.
I would. I think.
Oh, you would?
I would say see it, but be prepared and know in the same way that we covered The Pianist last year. Don't just like walk into The Pianist. You need to set your expectations. You need to know that you're not going to come out of here understanding everything perfectly, and that's okay. You need to know that. And also, there's disturbing imagery. That's something you need to know. You might not be able to ride this ride. It's kind of like they give you the warning of like strobe lights may cause seizures. This isn't for everybody. This has that just kind of disclaimer.
There are a couple movies that we've covered on the show where I've been in the camp where like I can sink into the weirdness and I can sink into the lack of clarity and resolution. We didn't cover it on the show, but like the Aronofsky stuff. So like Requiem for a Dream. I like that, right?
I was gonna say I recommend putting this movie on at a Halloween party in the background. You have enough TVs up there. You put it on. You just have the volume at a certain level so people will look at the imagery itself. I think it's a good conversation piece there.
Dustin, do you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
Next week, we have 3 twisty-turny M. Night Shyamalan movies to pick from. Option number 1 from 2004, The Village. A series of events test the belief of a small isolated countryside village. Option number 2 from 1999, The Sixth Sense. After being shot by a resentful former patient whom he failed to help, a Philadelphia child psychologist seeks redemption by treating a young boy with a disturbing secret. Or option number 3 from 2002, Signs. A widowed former reverend living with his children and brother on a Pennsylvania farm finds mysterious crop circles in their fields, which suggests something more frightening to come. What's it going to be?
Not 4 senses, not 5 senses, 6 senses.
1, 2, 6.
The 6th sense. Let's do it.
I like that one.
Jarrell, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate you having you on, man.
No problem. This is great. I had a good time, and thank you guys very much for having me on.
And then thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. So subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on our YouTube channel and give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at @movie_retro, and email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Producing and providing this podcast is fun but not free, so we invite you to support our show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. All proceeds will go towards making the show better for you, the listeners. So as always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Dustin?
Hey, slowpokes, guess what? There's no tomorrow. Know why, baby? Because it'll never get here.
And then I'm going to serve this to you now just so you have it on my voice. Dustin, do you want to help me pick a movie for next time? All right, and let's go with The Sixth Sense.